from MPQ, and then he is the head of sales in Meniga. So he is going to share the matching ESG and sustainability with the open banking API. So the ESG part is arousing quite some interest in local industry as well. So we are really glad that to have an expert here to share about how it's doing from the others region perspective. So thanks. So can you hear me well?
Yes, indeed. Okay. Indeed, perfectly. Patrick, can you hear me well?
Yeah, good. And I see your slide as well. So, okay. So I pass the stage to you and let you introduce your topics. Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Patrick. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. And of course, thank you very much for inviting us to share how Meniga is helping financial institutions around the world, and particularly some of the most relevant use cases in Asia Pacific at the moment. Patrick, what I'm about to share with the audience is how modern banks and third-party open banking providers are approaching two major trends in the market, open banking API and sustainability or ESG initiatives, as we also know them. But before covering this fascinating topic, Patrick, let me just step back or set a bit of the scene on the feedback that the banking industry is actually getting from consumers and from customers around the world. It is clear that banking customers want digitally driven features, right? To save time, to save money, to overall improve their finances, right? But it is also clear that the new generations, the Gen Zs, the millennials, they are only looking for banks that can now offer a very highly personalized banking relationship. And what is even more important is that for those new generations, if they don't get that from their banks, they will definitely look somewhere else for that level of personalization and advice. We also hearing from customers that banking is not just about having the best products anymore. We're also hearing that this is much more about building a better relationship with the customers, right? And let me, if you don't mind, let me just briefly touch on what is happening in other industries. This is particularly relevant. And if you think about these three companies, it's actually quite interesting: Tesla, Amazon, or Apple. Patrick, just do you know what these three companies have in common? Can you share something that you consider as a commonality from these three companies? I think you're on mute. Sorry, I think you're on mute. You don't mind.
Okay. I think they are very tech-driven and also being a symbol of role model that, talk about innovation, technologies, etc. Yeah.
Okay, which is true, which is very true. But let me also share with you that these three companies actually didn't invent some of the products that made them very, very successful. If you think about electric cars, they were invented years ago. If you think about Nokia and BlackBerry, they sold millions of phones before Apple released actually its first iPhone. Or even Amazon, they didn't invent a single product when they were when they first launched, right? They sold other people's product. But what they do have in common, what they do have in common, these three companies, the experience they build with their customers from day one. And I'll give you two examples. Amazon allows you to do a one-click product return with no questions asked, without questions asked. Tesla is allowing customers to cancel the order at no cost until the day before of the production line begins. And what can I say about Apple's experience as customers? They don't have customers, they just have fans, right? And let's not underestimate what they've done fantastically well, what this experience have done fantastically well. They've achieved a level of customer experience that is very, very supreme. And to achieve that, what they've done is they've created very special customer journeys through personalization. And they connect, and this is a very important word, connect with their customers in very relevant ways, depending on who they are and what they care about. And this is where the opportunity resides. This is where using sustainability and open banking to connect with a segment of customers that want to better respect our environment. A great opportunity actually for financial institutions and third-party open banking providers to marry what we call purpose and profit by creating a very, very supreme customer experience. So to understand these two topics, how they relate to each other, let me quickly share a story. Meet Laura, a young professional from Hong Kong in her mid-30s. Laura considers herself pretty much a cashless person. She spends all her money using debit, credit cards, and a range of payment super apps that she uses for transportation, food delivery, groceries, etc. But Laura and her friends, by the way, they also part of this new generation that is concerned about climate change, right? And how we are treating our planet. So let me share with you a couple of thoughts on what we could do. Since we now have access to the entire spending history of Laura, thanks to open banking APIs, and since we now have access see, we now know that Laura actually is becoming more and more environmentally aware. Let me ask you, wouldn't it be nice to provide Laura with an estimate of her carbon footprint, automatically calculated based on her transaction history? Or wouldn't it be nice actually for Laura to self-explore her overall carbon footprint by categories so she can get an idea, a good idea, of how green her spending habits are, or how green the spending habits are not. So let me introduce you to Meniga Carbon Insight. This is our digital footprint advisor for people like Laura. Our approach to help customers to become more sustainable and more environmentally friendly. And we do it presenting the information inside the actual mobile banking app. Most of us, though, don't really understand what a carbon footprint number is. For example, Patrick, if I tell you 800 kilograms of CO2 emissions, that's often not something that everybody understands. So instead of just displaying a very confusing number or a meaningful number, what we do is we create simple, personalized messages for customers to understand their emissions and how they relate to the things that we know. And let me give you a couple of examples. If I told you that it takes 40 trees, 1 full year, to absorb 800 kilograms of CO2 emissions, or even if I told you that 800 kilograms of CO2 emissions is the equivalent to a 3-hour flight between Singapore and Hong Kong, that is definitely something you can relate to. Now it's not only the 800 number, is the equivalent to a 3-hour flight that you know it typically generates quite a lot of carbon footprint or CO2 emissions. Or even if I told you that your monthly carbon footprint is actually 2% higher than the national average, which, by the way, happens to be 700 kilograms of CO2 emissions. So with this approach, we're actually helping customers like Laura to understand in very simple terms what the sustainability outcomes of their spending actions are. Very, very important. And not only we can help educating the Lauras in her overall sustainability journey, but we can also engage with her by providing very personalized tips based on spending habits. And those tips actually will help Laura to become more sustainable. And not only that, but we can also help customers like Laura to take action. Okay, and this is very important, not only educating them, but also give the possibility to take actions to become better, right? For instance, if we could invite Laura to take part on a challenge to reduce her weekly fuel spend by 20%, for instance, instead of driving 5 days a week, take public transport 1 day a week to commute to the office. Very simple, but very, very powerful challenge. Or even challenge Laura to reduce her weekly fast food spending by 10%, for instance, suggesting to eat at a restaurant that sells locally produced food instead of a fast food chains like Burger King, just to name one. And of course, since we know now that Laura cares about sustainability, we can also offer her a range of new products. And this is very, very, very important, Patrick, because this is where sustainability meets profitability for financial institutions. For instance, we can offer a green credit card with higher cashback rewards for your sustainable purchases that will likely be very appealing to a person like Laura, or a green home renovation loan to turn Laura's apartment into a sustainable home, buying energy efficiency appliances, or improve insulations, or improve natural lighting, right? Or even let's think about investment. Let's think about those customers that actually have a lot of money and are willing to invest. We can offer Laura an investment product to put her savings into a green fund that only invests in sustainability companies. So really, really, really a whole new wall of possibilities here, Patrick. If you remember Laura and her friends, they are in the mid-30s, part of a very well-paid middle class that is increasingly conscious about climate change, right? So if you're still wondering why this is relevant, I'll say that now that we know that Laura and her friends are interested in sustainability, and now that we have access, as this is very, very important, to the entire spending life or spending history of Laura through open banking APIs, we can help banks and we can help third-party providers to unlock actually a great opportunity, a great business opportunity, leveraging sustainability and open banking to proactively cross-sell green banking products to a very specific segment of customers that are actually now making life choices based on sustainable principles. So this is what we do in Meniga, Patrick. This is what Meniga does, and this is how we are helping organizations, financial institutions to marry purpose and profit. Meniga aggregates, Meniga consolidates, and Meniga enrich internal and external open banking data from open banking APIs to create personalized green banking experiences for banking customers and for third-party providers as well, customers from third-party providers. So that's what I wanted to share, Patrick. I try to be sweet and short, and hopefully that's something we have achieved. Thanks very much again, and thank you for the to the audience for tuning in. Hopefully, this conversation or these topics help you to visualize actually the potential and the money to be made from open banking APIs and sustainability. Obviously, please reach out to us if you want Meniga to help you in this journey. And Patrick, since we have some time, maybe this is a good moment to address any questions or the audience that have been posted in the audience in the chat.
Yeah, okay. So thanks for your sharing. I think ESG residency do also raise quite a lot of discussion. I'm not the expert of ESG, but we do also heard about the ESG and open banking API or data, so how they can better work together. So I know that you are actually an expert in this field, and then especially your team is working in the sustainability ESG for more than 5 years. So can you share a bit from the Europe, what is your observation, and then how do you observe in the APAC area, especially in Hong Kong, how this kind of experience can help our local audience or potential local bank partner, etc.?
Yes. So one of the biggest, differences is between Europe and Asia Pac. Europe has been way ahead of Asia or Asia Pacific in open banking, right? So we have, as you said, for the last probably more than 5 years, we've already been working with a lot of open banking providers in Europe as well as banks to help them actually implementing open banking initiatives, right? What happens is 3 years ago, sustainability became again a huge topic, and a lot of banks in Europe wanted to bring that into their kind of product offering, right? So we've been working in Europe for almost 5 years in combining these two big trends. And what is happening now in APAC, I guess the difference why now is relevant is open banking is becoming a reality in Asia Pacific countries, right? The pace of open banking adoption is definitely different depending on the country you are talking to. Hong Kong versus Singapore versus Australia versus Malaysia, right? Some of them have more regulations, some of them are still trying to come up with the greatest, with the best regulations. But the regulation is coming, the regulation is there. And what we're seeing is a lot of financial institutions and a lot of third-party providers have realized there is actually money to be made from open banking. The open banking used to be seen as a cost, purely as a cost. We have to open our transaction data to other financial institutions, and we have to spend money in doing that. This is a cost, right? But now you actually can see that there is money to be made. So a lot of banks and a lot of third-party providers are interested, in adopting this type of initiatives. And of course, because governments are also demanding a lot of green initiatives, green finance initiatives to banks, this is where both are actually meeting, right? The sustainability, the purpose, and the profit is a reality, is here to stay, and is already happening in different countries by different financial institutions.
Okay. So one question is that recently I also have a chance to talk to a startup. They are actually doing some environmental prediction so that they can predict something for the banks, for the loan, and also under the ESG criteria, etc. And then I can see there's quite some gap during the discussion. Okay, the staff think they're ready, the bank think is not ready, and then So can you share about more experience from that, and especially from this kind of open banking opportunity? Do you think it's more interest from the bank side or from the third party side? Yeah.
I don't think it's a small interest anymore. I think it was at the beginning because nobody wants to spend money if they don't see the return. So the open banking regulation initially, as I mentioned before, was very much seen as, okay, now I have to put an effort as a bank in opening my transaction data and to share that transaction data with other financial institutions so they can leverage, right? But a lot of banks actually realize that they can do the same, right? They can bring data from other financial institutions, and if they combine that with what they know about their customers, which is, for instance, they care about sustainability, they actually can make very relevant offers to their customers. Green banking is a big thing right now. Green finance, if you go to any CEO report, you will see that they talk about sustainability, they talk about green finance, green bonds, green investments. All these initiatives need a sustainability or has sustainability as a priority. So by leveraging open banking with sustainability, they can actually make quite a lot of money. There is money to be made for sure for banks. So it's very much what we're seeing, and I think, as I said, it's not a cost anymore. It's revenue what is driving this interest, potential revenue for banks and for third-party providers. Patrick, maybe I should touch on that. Third-party providers, they also have a lot of data, right? They are accessing to the data from different banks, right? They have this data, and they've pretty much done a very good job in moving data from A to B, but they have not actually leveraged the powerful of that data, right? How powerful that data is. So why not them as a third-party providers? Why not they also can look at that data? Why don't they can look at the sustainability information that they have and say, okay, if this data is from Patrick and Patrick cares about sustainability, maybe I should offer Patrick a green credit card instead of just not doing anything, right? So there is value for banks. There is value also for third-party providers in approaching this type of solutions like Meniga's.
Okay, so maybe another question that I feel that's also my experience working with the bank in the open banking initiative as well. So I think they're talking about the open banking, especially related to ESG. It may be quite early stage. So as you can see, if they can understand how they can start the first step, then it may be having a challenge to them. So can you share a bit when you start doing this in back to Europe, your partner, the bank, etc. How can, for example, the audience here know how they can do the first step or maybe potential POC, or how can for example, there's a manager here, he want to justify and help the boss to convince a budget here. So how can they do the first step?
So one thing that we do as a company, Meniga, when we bring data from providers, third-party providers through open banking, what we've done in Europe for a number of years, you're right. It can be quite an expensive initiative if you don't have a good clear return. But you're right. You can validate the approach. You can just start small, right? You may have just one open banking provider in one country. Think about a large bank, a multinational global brand, right? A global bank that is going to have to implement open banking in probably the next 10 countries in the next 5 years, right? They're going to have to do this. They don't have to go crazy. They can start small. They can start with one country and bring the data from open banking, and then validate the returns and validate what the value they're actually getting from that data or making money out of that data. And then, of course, once you've validated the approach, if you start small with one country, why not? You can go global and you can open or you can launch the same initiatives in other countries. Did I answer the question, Patrick?
Yeah. Because I trying to think from our audience perspective, what they want to understand better. I also saw a question. It's okay. So there's a audience asking, is there any application level risk when they are using the open banking data for the machine learning, etc. Do you have any supplement when you are, especially from your experience is working in the bank from Europe? So do you have any the wish thing that you can share about the open banking data?
Yeah, so what happens is with open banking data, one of the issues or challenges a lot of organizations face is that open banking can be very different, right? Depending on where it comes from, who is giving it to you, in what format. So one of the values that actually Meniga brings is we're not only able to take that data and leverage on that data, we can actually also normalize the data. So one of the things that you will see where Meniga is actually helping banks is that we use not only the open banking data, but we also create a normalized layer of the data. So in a way, we put all the data from different sources into a normalized format that the bank can actually, or the third party provider that the bank actually can use in a very easy way. Because if the data is not normalized, if the data is not, it is a challenge. If you have different sources with different formats, it becomes very challenging. And by the way, Meniga has been normalizing data for more than 10 years. So this is something we've been doing for quite a long time. We have a lot of, complex algorithms basically dealing with this complex problem, which is normalized data from different sources. So there's a lot of benefits in not only bring the data, but also normalizing the data. So it's kind of usable by the banks.
Okay, so thanks for sharing and also the question and answer. So I believe that this topic is quite new to our audience as well. So hopefully today we have answered some of your question. If you want to know more about the ESG and the open banking API lesson learned, feel free to reach out our speakers offline. So thanks again for your time. So see you soon. I think see
Thank
you
you,
next
Patrick.
years if possible. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks.